Welcome back to another edition of the Balas and Skene Show, part of the Wolverine.com podcast series. My name is Chris Balas. With me, five-time Big Ten champion Doug Skene. Got your rings out, man? I think I told you to bring your rings out this time. No?
Oh, I didn't. I don't have them.
They're in
No.
a safe somewhere or in that gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas. Yeah. No, no
No.
reason for that. Doug Skene is Mr. Successful. He's doing a great job with his career post-football and NFL player as well with the New England Patriots. So this guy knows a little something about offensive line play, and we're going to talk about it here. Just getting over the Rona, guys, so bear with me if my voice isn't what it used to be. I got some chapped lips here. I got some chapped up nose. It's been a rough weekend. I haven't missed a game in a long time, Skene, and that was tough. It was tough to watch on TV, knowing I should have been there for that beatdown. The most impressive win of the year for Michigan by far.
Well, before we get into that, I'm curious.
Yes.
For a guy that goes to all the games, you're always there, you're in the press box. What's it like to watch a game like the rest of us fans on television? How'd you
It
like that?
sucks. I hate it. I'll be honest. There's something about being there.
Yeah.
And there's two things. Everybody says, oh, man, you get to sit in the press box, and how awesome is that? Two things about that. You're behind glass, so it's sterile, right? You can't say anything. You can't yell. You can't, and it hasn't stopped me a couple times. John Borton has had to calm me down at Notre Dame games, which would make
Yeah,
people
I've heard Karsh has to walk down the hall and check on you at times.
Yeah, he says that. That's not true. So, yeah. Usually they're just messing with my placard and making short jokes or something on there. He and John Jansen, who are, by the way, are doing a fantastic job as the Michigan play-by-play team. So, but it sucks to know, to see it and to have been there in that environment. There's just nothing like being at an opposing stadium on game day. And like, you love to go in there. You say, park the tanks, let's go in there and kick some ass. And that's exactly what they did, man. So you had to be impressed, especially with the offensive line play right from the get-go. It looked like they finally had an opponent that got their attention.
Yeah. So there's always something exciting about going on the road for the first time, and you get to go with your teammates, and you're going into a pretty rowdy atmosphere there at Nebraska. And so that didn't surprise me. The team came together, and this is a continuation of the last two seasons under Coach Harbaugh, where they finally figured out how to go on the road, embrace the atmosphere, take ownership, and park the tanks and just take over. And that's what the Michigan offense did in the first part of that game. They're cracking off successful runs, running the football, throwing the football. They looked like they knew what they were doing and comfortable doing it out there. It wasn't perfect for sure, but certainly looked very comfortable taking over the football game early, and before you knew it, it was 14-0.
It was, and you knew once they got the fourth down stop, especially, it was 14-0. And Matt Rule, Nebraska's coach, he said, you know what? He said, we get it to 14-7 there, and maybe it's a different game. First of all, there's no guarantee you get it to 14-7, even if you get the 4th and 1, because it's going to be tough for them to get into the end zone the way they were not getting any push up front against that Michigan front. So maybe 14-3 will give them that. Even so, they weren't stopping this Michigan offense. But the left side of the line, especially, let's talk about the run blocking first, Skene. And the left side of the line there, I really think that the Ladarius Henderson, Trevor Keegan combo is really getting better there. They looked really comfortable pushing some guys out of there, and Jim Harbaugh talked about that today.
Yeah, so in the run blocking, I agree. I said this last week coming out of the Rutgers game. I think the combination that I think is probably best suited right now, after watching these tackles rotate for now 5 games, is Ladarius at left and Carson at right. And it's not perfect, as we'll talk about a little bit in the passing game, but run blocking, these guys seem pretty comfortable. Now, again, it's not perfect, but it can get there when you just leave these two alone and let them sit and play and play and play and play together, and they'll get more comfortable together. But I like Ladarius at left tackle. And, of course, Keegan, he's certainly a senior veteran guy, one of the better guards in the Big Ten and beyond this year. He's going to be a high draft pick kind of guy. Really good player in there. So the effectiveness on the ground looked cleaner this week, and they looked more solid, looked more confident in there. And this sounds like, it sounds and looks like, and you can look at the statistics, that it's starting to come around and get back to where we, not back to where we wanted them to be, but starting to elevate to where we expect them to be.
Yeah, and Matt Rule said, and I expected them to come out against our number 1 ranked run defense on paper. Let's be honest. This is not the number 1 run defense in the country, but they were coming in statistically, basically because of who they played. But he
Yeah.
said, I expected Jim Harbaugh to maybe try to make a statement. Now, two things. They did it methodically. And I frankly, I love that. When I listened to guys, analysts like Chris Peterson, who used to coach at Boise State and Washington, say they have an identity. That's something that they got away from when they were under Jim Harbaugh like 3-4 years ago when they did the speed and space crap. And I'm like, nah, you don't have to do that. Stick to who you know, who you are, and what you know. But they aren't breaking off the huge long run, Skene. And two things are teams, do you think, trying to take that away from Michigan, or what is the reason that Michigan's not breaking the long run? Somebody was asking about that.
Well, there was just a few plays in that Nebraska game that were awfully close.
Mhm.
You were watching at home like I was, and there was just a backside block that maybe wasn't held quite long enough. There was just one little linebacker get to that wasn't quite held long enough. But there were a couple plays where all Edwards or Corum had to do was make a guy miss or didn't have somebody coming late to grab an ankle where it would have cracked off for 20 or more yards. So of all the games we've watched so far, this is the closest thing to cracking off the long runs. And the next step, obviously, is to clean that up. Because what happens is you go back, let's say you're playing left tackle. We'll just make this up. And Ladarius has a backside cutoff block that he steps inside, tries to make a block on, and he's got part of that block. And then late, maybe that linebacker, that defensive end peels off. And that's the guy that 10 yards down the field makes the tackle. So Coach Moore looks at that with the player and says, okay, let's work on our backside cutoff block so that guy doesn't get that chance to make that shoestring tackle or trip him up. And then we go off for 30 or more or 20 or more or whatever it is. And those are the kinds of things now you're dialing in here mid-season to get to the highest levels that we expect this offensive line to be, and they can be.
Yeah, we'll talk about more on that in a minute, but I'm going to talk first about home field apparel. Home field, a premium college apparel brand based in Indianapolis that I absolutely love. Skiing, I've talked about this a million times. Wearing my Big Ten 1992 Big Ten champion shirt. I was there. I watched you guys live vicariously through you. I could have been a great holder or kicker if I could kick or hold. So, but anyway, commitment to creating incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel, vintage college designs, growing collection of over 150 plus colleges to choose from, including your favorite teams, including Michigan, of course. Somebody actually ordered a Grand Valley shirt. I thought that was really cool.
That's cool.
It is cool. So they got a dedication to delving into those archives and the history of each school, and there are going to be tons of Big Ten championship shirts for you guys to choose from. National championship apparel, obviously, in football and basketball. So authentic, nostalgic in their designs, perfect for showing off your team pride as college football returns. But not just that, it's comfortable, Skene. Yours should be on your way if you haven't gotten it yet. If not, your neighbor probably stole it. So,
well, my neighbor's not a big dude, so if he's wearing it, if he's wearing a Michigan championship T-shirt from 1992 and it looks awfully large on him,
yeah,
I'll go next door and I'll beat
he
him.
probably gave it to his wife as a nightshirt or something like that. So, because it's a big one, buddy. So, but I love it. It's exceptionally comfortable. It's, you know what? I washed it a couple of times and it helps. It's comfort. So, I love it. Homefieldapparel.com is where you go, guys. Check it out. 15% off your order, your first order with the code Wolverine23. That's Wolverine23 at homefieldapparel.com. Perfect college football gear for the season. And now I'm bringing out the long sleeved ones, buddy, because it's going to be 53 degrees on Saturday night in Minneapolis, which is great football weather. Actually, 53 for the high, so probably in the 40s at kickoff. Did you like playing in colder weather, hotter weather? Did it matter to you?
Cold.
Yeah.
The heat was, I had enough of the heat playing high school football in Texas when it's 100 degrees for practice every day and you play on Friday nights and you're playing on the turf or whatever, even on grass. I had enough of the heat. So for me, I enjoyed the fall feel, the late October, November thing. Although I will say there was one memorable game when I guess I should say when you're playing is what I meant to say. When you're playing out there, the colder temperatures we always had fun with. But if it's cold and it's raining and you're not playing and you're a redshirt freshman standing on the sideline and it's 34 degrees and raining against Minnesota in 1988 or 89, I can't remember. It was
88.
Yep.
It was 89, I think.
That was a brutal experience.
That rain was coming down the the stadium stands
It
there. I was
was
wearing
it
a
was
garbage bag as a poncho.
oh, it was cold. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, it was cold. But when you're playing in that stuff,
yeah,
it's fun, right? Because it doesn't matter how cold it is, because you're hot out there. You feel good, and so I'm sure these guys come Saturday night up in Minnesota, they'll love the atmosphere because this will be the first kind of cool snap. Now I know it's hot in Ann Arbor right now. Going to be hot practice today, hot practice tomorrow, and then this weather's going to come through this week and make it feel like fall around here, which is always, I don't know, just something exciting about it.
yeah. There is something to say about it. It was in 1988, and one of your quarterbacks got hurt that game, if I'm not mistaken. So my
Trip
man Mike
Wellborn was the guy who had the injury, and I remember that. And or maybe it was Tony
wasn't.
Bowles.
No, it wasn't that game because it was a different game. I think it was yeah. Tripp was at home. I think in 1990. If I'm not
Well, then
mistaken. It was
Then Bowles got hurt in that Minnesota game. Then somebody got
up,
hurt
up in
that
the
night,
dome. Up in the
and
dome. Yeah. So
the dome with it, but I don't know that
yeah,
dome. The old Metrodome was probably the worst atmosphere in all of the Big Ten at the time.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah. The answer is
Let's get back to talking about football. Here, let's talk about Donovan Edwards. You know, he averaged I think 3.8 yards per carry. He looked like he ran harder to me, number one, which was good. There were a couple times that he still goes down. That first guy gets him by the ankles. So of the three backs, I think he's more the guy that's apt to go down a little bit earlier.
well that's certainly the
Fair?
argument can be made for that. But I think he ran harder, Balas, but I think he
Yeah.
ran smarter too. I think his
Okay.
vision was a little bit better. I think his cuts were a little bit better. Using the backside of those yellow pants, and backs see that blocks going left, and you're going to cut right. Of course, Corum had some incredible cuts in there, but I think Donovan is coming around and playing the smart position of the running back there with that ball in his hands, and that we talked about earlier, and we saw where he's pressing and he's not giving the patience and the time for those blocks to develop the way they should, and he's just taking his own path, which wasn't the best path. And I think he showed a step forward in this Nebraska game. But I agree, and that's something that coaches are always talking about is, how easily you go down, how hard is it to make you go down. And I think he's going to get better at that as long as he stays in this path of running smart. You can run hard and smart, and then you can work on the finer things of seeing, all right, how do I run through these arm tackles so that my feet don't get tripped up? And there's drills they can do out there. I'm sure they're going through those kinds of things to make sure that your feet are staying in a position of where you can maintain some balance and run through that stuff. And it'll come with time. He's a talented guy. It'll get there. And I saw a step forward for him.
Yeah, me too. Even though the numbers didn't really back it up, I did like what I saw from Khalil Mullings.
Yeah.
This kid is starting to get it. He was playing linebacker here, and then he moves over. Now he's back to being a full-time running back, and he did play running back in high school. And I did write last week. I said the coaches, from what we'd heard, were really liking to starting to like what they saw from him in practice, and that he could get some more carries when it mattered. In short yardage situations, not only is he getting through the line, but then he's breaking some of those tackles. We saw the 20-something yard run. This kid is powerful. This kid looks like a good Big Ten running back now, and not just a guy.
He's deceivingly powerful and contact, and there's falling forward, and then there's driving forward, I think, Balas, and there's a subtlety there when you watch that style and the way Mullings hits that line of scrimmage. There's a pop. There's a penetration with his helmet, and it's darting through the clutter in there, and he's dragging people for an extra couple yards as opposed to going down and falling forward for a yard. And it's a different style than we've seen from other backs. I think it's a different style than Corum and Edwards for sure. But now it's another curveball that we can throw at people with him in the backfield and then play action off of him and his style, which allows more things to happen offensively. It's a positive for this offense.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the offense for a second. But speaking of pops, tell me you saw Christian Boyvan's hit on special teams when he absolutely killed that kid.
It's like a form tackle. It's like how you draw it up. Form tackle, eyes up, drive your nose through the sternum, out the backside of the defender or the player.
On a kickoff.
And drive the hips, wrap the arms. It's like, all right, put that on the highlight reel forever of how you play the position and how you tackle somebody. It was awesome.
It was a fantastic. Traverse City kid, by the way. I got friends up there, the Roses. He told me about this kid and said he's a walk-on. Don't be surprised if you see him play. Those Traverse City kids know how to hit, man. That was fantastic. So shout out to him there. I do want to come back to the tight ends. I thought the blocking from the tight ends and looking at the film was outstanding. And they answered the bell. That first game, they were subpar. Since then, they have been outstanding. Max Bredesen is one that's comes to mind. AJ Barner has continued to improve.
Yeah.
Wilson Ludlam, they're starting to double team him in the passing game, so he's starting to block a little bit more and block a little bit better, create opportunities for guys. But what have you seen from those guys?
Yeah, again, I would echo what you just said. There's a development happening here before our eyes, and I said in the first couple weeks of the season, you just can't replicate this stuff in practice. You just can't. And so there's a developmental stepping stone from getting it done in a walkthrough with your feet being exactly where they need to be to getting it done in a full padded practice and a live drill, and you can simulate all you want in those practices, and that's all fine and great. It's all you can do, and then it's game repetition and game execution. And now we're seeing this tight end unit come around to being more effective. And you just can't get that until you go out and you get reps at it and you break down the film and you realize where your foot was wrong, or your second step was off and you got out of balance, or your eyeballs are wrong and your hands are wrong, and you can fine tune this stuff. And so again, this is a natural progression for me, as long as things, the way you see it, it's a positive progression. You see guys getting a little bit better every week, a little bit better gradually, and then suddenly things
Yeah,
really start to pop. And this is the time of season where you see that suddenly. It's like, whoa, watch out. Here, this is looking really good. Now, you got to temper this a little bit, because Nebraska's, I don't think, was all that great of a football team, but Michigan went out and executed to a level in their running game with the tight end unit and this run blocking, as good as we've seen all year.
yeah, there's no question, and it's going to be like that for a while because the Big Ten is reminiscent of the 1970s. If we're being honest here, where you've got the Big Three and the little 11.
You got three.
Instead of the Big Two and the big
Yeah.
and the little 8. And I'm not even convinced. I watched Penn State. They weren't overwhelming against Northwestern. They were
Yeah.
tied at 10.5, and their offense is kind of clunky still. They aren't breaking off big runs. Northwestern is certainly not the standard. Now their defense is fast, and I'll give them that. But
Statistically, their
right,
Northwestern game has helped them, because statistically their defense is now ranked higher than ours.
right, which is
And
fine.
it's
You know
fine.
what?
It is what it is,
Yeah,
but I think it's fair to say when you watch Penn State, yeah, they got some
yeah,
players.
they
This
do have some players.
They got some players. This is going to be a fascinating matchup when we get there, and
Yeah,
I think we'll be fine once we get there, as long as we keep taking these positive progressive steps toward improvement.
and as long as you keep your quarterback upright, which brings me to my next topic here. They are without a left tackle. I think it's fair to say now at this point. Yeah, they've got guys that can run block and they're doing it well. But if you
Well,
got sitting on the right scheme, then you've got a leaky right tackle. If you've got Darius Henderson on the left, you've got a leaky left tackle, and maybe even with Carson Barnhart over there at times. So how do you get?
yeah, I would say I would correct you, Balas, and say they're not without a left tackle. They
Okay,
have two guys that can play over there, and we got two guys that can play on the right, three guys if you throw in Trente in there.
who is
And
playing
so
very well, by the way.
yeah, so the question is when do we see the finer things clean up? So here's some good news for you. We started tracking some statistics I did offensive line performance wise. Tackles for losses this week was the only category of the 5 that I track for the offensive line that got worse from last week. This week we gave up 2 tackles for losses. Not good. Last week we
Yeah,
gave up
not
none.
bad.
It's not
Yeah,
the worst ever. 2 in a
right.
football game is not that bad. No gains, only had 2. Only 2 plays for no gain. QB pressures went from 7 down to 5. QB hits went from 7 down to 3, and sacks went from 2 to 0
Right.
last week versus this week. So these are all good numbers except for that tackles for loss allowed. I get greedy, right? And I've said this 1,000 times on our podcast. No one touches the quarterback ever. That's the perfect game where the quarterback is upright, can throw, even if he moves around a bit, as long as he doesn't get hit. Now, in this game at left, Ladarius gave up a couple bad pass sets and got beat. And in one play in particular, we had an entire defensive end land on top of JJ and smash him to the ground. And JJ got up and looked to see where the ball went, which is always a good sign. You always look for your quarterback's head to pop up immediately to see where the ball went. But boy, does that make your heart flutter a little bit when your quarterback is laying there smashed.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that has to be fixed. You can't have that kind of thing. And so the greedy old offensive lineman that I am, this is the kind of thing that can't happen. We have to have perfection over there at left tackle. And so the worst thing that could happen is maybe your quarterback gets touched, but we can't have guys laying on top of them with all their weight. Can't have
No,
it.
330 pounds. And guess what? On the other one, he threw a touchdown pass because he and Roman Wilson are in such in sync now. You know, in the past, those receivers would stop their routes if they were covered. Now, when JJ is scrambling out of there, if you got a statue at quarterback, there'd be many more sacks this year. Let's call it like it is. But JJ McCarthy gets away like a Jim Harbaugh used to and keeps his eyes downfield and he throws a laser to Roman Wilson, who sees it, comes back across the field. What a play. So,
Wilson is turning in and has certainly upped his game and
yes.
his ability to make things happen after the prescribed route, right?
Yes. Yep.
So JJ's taking his time back in there, which is a good indicator of protection. But
Yep.
Wilson, the guy I was sitting there watching the game with this weekend, he's like, "Who's that kid?" I'm like, "That kid's been playing football around here for a while, but now he's taking his game to the next level and making the acrobatic stuff, catching the
Yeah.
football in the back of the kid's helmet and then ripping his head down with him to score the touchdown." That's a highlight that should be in the highlight reels forever in college
Yeah.
football. That's how good of a catch that was.
Yeah. In fact, Jim Harbaugh said they are going to put the picture of it up in the team room there, like they do for some of the legendary plays. It was a late throw, and I understand it was probably his third progression, but he was open for a long time. Skene, you could see in
Yeah.
the end zone view, and it's like JJ didn't quite get there in time. And he said he saw the defensive back coming over. He said, "Oh my God," but his receiver bailed him out, and that's what I've been waiting for years, frankly, to see from guys like Roman Wilson. If you're a next level receiver, then you make a play like that, and that's something with the contested catches too. Some of them, they weren't getting great separation, but they were making the sliding grabs, which are tough catches too when you got a laser coming in there. So they really upped their game, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And again, at times you think like that play there with the catch against the back of the helmet is JJ getting a little too greedy?
Yeah,
Is he hanging out for something that he wants instead of something that he has right in front of him? And that's a little concerning as a fan sitting on a couch watching a game on Saturday. I'd never played the quarterback position, but I'm a guy who's a law and order and due process and all this. Is like, dude, take your first route. If it's there, take it. Don't be looking at it if it's wide open and then going, well, maybe I can get more. Maybe I can get more. And I'm making this up, right, Balas? I'm watching the
yeah,
kid play, and he's an outstanding quarterback, and he can make all the throws. But I just go, it's okay. It's okay to take what they give you.
yeah,
It's not always going to be a home run, but the kid's out there having fun. And with the exception of one bad game and just a couple throws and a couple of these other games, he's doing an outstanding job back there. So I trust him. He's our quarterback. The only thing that concerns me is keeping him upright, right?
yeah,
And we
yeah,
had a host of other guys come in and play, but none of them are JJ. At this point, we need to keep him healthy. So that's why I go back to Ladarius or Barnhart or whoever our tackles are. No one can get a full shot on this guy. You got to keep him healthy.
Did your wife, now Tracy, then your girlfriend ever come down and kiss you between your quarters like
You
JJ's
know,
doing?
you brought I'm glad
Tracy
it's funny
wouldn't
you
have
brought that
Tracy
you brought
something.
that up because
I
I'm
had to.
watching the game and Tracy comes in the room and that highlight or whatever that was on there and she goes, "What's up with that?" She's like, and the friend that was watching it, he's like, "What do you mean? You wouldn't have allowed that to happen when you guys were in school?" I said, "Hell no, I wouldn't have been over there. We'd have gotten in so much trouble for
Yeah,
going over and kissing a girlfriend in the middle of the game. We would have never heard the end of that." So I
yeah,
guess times have changed, Ballas. So
yeah.
yeah,
You
good
tell
for him.
Tracy to you tell Tracy to step up and be there, but between the ninth and the 10th holes on there, give you a big kiss and then maybe a drink or something. So you tell her I said that, and I
I'll
can't
tell
wait
her.
to hear. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't wait to hear what she says about that. So, the woman who once got mad at me for taking a mulligan, which is fantastic.
Uh
So,
huh.
all right, let's talk now about Jim Harbaugh said something today on Monday. He said, we might have to do something that we do with the defensive line, the way that some of these offensive linemen are playing. Trente Jones is one that he mentioned. Trente plays hard. I don't know if you noticed it, but I
Always
noticed
has.
he was in
Trent
yeah,
it's never been an effort
yeah,
issue with that
no,
kid. He's always
no.
going.
He was moving people, and I was really encouraged by what the second team did. Frankly, they've mailed it in like maybe the first 4 games or whatever, but they moved down the field and they were hitting people, which was great. But
Mhm.
he said we may have to plug some guys in if give somebody a nudge. We call it a rally with the defensive line that we do. If a guy, okay, we got somebody fresh, let's throw him in there for a couple plays. He said we may have to do that on the offensive line because we just have so many bodies there like Trente. And I'm thinking, well, don't you want to develop that chemistry? And I could maybe see it if you got a guy struggling for a couple series or something like that. But is that something that you really want to experiment with it at this time when you're trying to get these guys into pass blocking shape and everything else?
Well, Balas, I think if it's scripted, that it's probably going to be all right as long as the guys understand and if you're practicing the reps in there. So if a guy like Trente has earned the chance to get out there on the field and he's progressing in the practices and the drills and doing everything that's asked of him, then maybe the coaching staff says, "All right, the third possession, Trente, you're playing right tackle, period, and Carson, you're going to left, and then let's just practice it. We're just going to get used to it." And that's my old buddy Mark Staten, who used to be the offensive line coach at Michigan State for all those years, and we're not going to promote the Spartans or anything here, but Mark used to do that because he wanted the guys that had earned the time to get on the field, and it did two things. It kept guys like him, the young men that have earned the time, like we're talking about Trente. You should be on the field if you're practicing and you're moving people and you're doing the things that you're expected to do. And the players know who's doing well out there, and so obviously he is. You got to get him on the field. And then the other thing is it keeps all your sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth offensive linemen on their toes. If the offensive line coach comes and says, "Balas, you're in at left tackle in the third series of this week. So, no matter where we are, no matter what situation, you're going in for the third series or the second series or whatever it is." And I'm not opposed to that. And I don't think that prevents an offensive line gelling together as long as the guys understand the context of the motivation for it. And then if Trente goes in there at right tackle and absolutely crushes people and does an outstanding job and doesn't give up those leaks and doesn't give up those hits on the quarterback and he plays clean over there, then maybe he starts a football game over there and Carson goes to left and who knows what the combination is. So as many times as I say, the ideal situation is five studs all learning to play together and you gel together. Well, that's not always the way it works because a guy gets hurt. And then you got to throw in an Al Hadi there at left guard when Keegan goes down with an injury. Or you got to rotate someone at center or whatever the combinations are. So there's a time and place to get guys in there that have earned it.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think there's any question. In your opinion now, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say, look, I've seen enough now to know that the best five, in my opinion, are LD at left, Carson Barnhart at right, and then the three studs in the middle there. I don't think you mess with it at this point. I know Miles Hinton was working on something, working through something. I think a lower leg injury. So, but I think when I look at the want to and the coming off the ball and the firing off the ball consistently, this is the best five to me.
I
Am I
agree.
wrong?
I
Okay.
agree. And like I said earlier, it wasn't perfect because
Mhm.
Ladarius gave up a couple hits there and got out of sorts on a couple of those snaps. But I still think the combination and Carson at right tackle he's most comfortable there because that's where most of the time he's played here at Michigan is at right
Right.
tackle. So if that's his strength, let's let him build upon his strength instead of trying to make him a stronger left tackle when he's naturally a right-handed guy. And
Yeah.
so I like the lineup, but that doesn't mean that a guy like Trente doesn't come in. And maybe you leave Ladarius at left and you take Carson off the field for a series because Trente's earned it. I don't think that's the end of the world either. And get some guys in there and move them around and see what happens. But I do think that the lineup right now is as you said with Ladarius at left and Carson at right.
Yeah, we'll see if they stick with that. It sure sounds like they might. As Jim Harbaugh said, this is a very unselfish group, Miles Hinton included in them. So, and Miles Hinton has had plenty of opportunity too to prove himself out there. He might not be 100% right now, and there will be. Let's be honest, there will probably be a time in the season where they need him again, guys. This is not ping pong out there. These guys are getting banged up and they're getting hurt. So, and it's not like he hasn't played some good ball either. So,
Mhm.
all right, let's switch to the other side of the ball here and what you saw from the defense. It was leaky in the middle, I thought, on some of those slants. It was a concern. There was too much room to run 2 or 3 times. There could have been a couple more scores, frankly. You get a tip ball on one of them, and that might have gone the distance. I think Rod Moore certainly is still not healthy yet, and that doesn't help. He's still coming back from injury. But overall, the way they took and designed that defense to take the option out of it, the way they were lining up and playing the edges, and the way the defensive line plays, man, it is hard to find any fault with the way those guys in the front seven are playing right
Yeah,
now.
against the run there's nothing really to nitpick here. I mean, of course, if we turn on the film, we probably could. There's
Hmm.
no doubt about it. But this defensive front is there's nothing with any consistency that anybody's done throughout the course of a football game. Now we'll see how this plays out, but again, these guys are going to get better and better as the season goes on. And we've seen that with this group, and they're going to continue to get better and more comfortable playing with the combinations of the guys that are on the field. So against the run, I feel as comfortable today as I did after week 2, where it's like, wow, this defense is as good as advertised. And so that doesn't change. And I think on some of those slants where they caught us for some bigger gains, I think an angle or two that gets changed by the safety on there, or just a couple angles or a couple of hand placements, and suddenly get a different result. So, I think we get greedy, Balas, as fans and people that go to the games and write this stuff. It's like no one should ever have a big play against us ever. Well, that's just not real. Right?
No,
Nebraska's not a good football team, but they got some kids that can play and run and catch, and they're pretty good athletes over there too. So
yeah,
they're going to make one or two, and future opponents are going to do the same thing. The
right,
question is can they do it consistently? And
yeah,
they in Nebraska couldn't, and no one else has been able to either. So that's the part that goes, you know what, you give up a play or two. What happens for the rest of the series? And this defense seems to rally around itself even when they do make a mistake or two.
yeah. My concern would be it's the slant, 2 or 3, 4 times now. Frankly, the slant, where it's a safety making it. The safety's one goal, and first objective is not to let anybody behind him. So
Nothing
when you
gets
got to
behind you.
play, right, you
Yeah.
got to play against Rutgers. That can't happen. You get to play, the 56-yarder to start the second half. If that's a 14-0 game, that's a momentum changer. They held anyway, but things like that in bigger games that might be a concern. So they need to tighten it up. And I do plan on asking secondary coach and defensive coordinator Steve Clinkscale about that on Wednesday, and he'll probably tell me, yeah, we need to do this, but we're working on it. I have zero doubt that a Clinkscale and Jay Harbaugh secondary is going to clean that up. So, but that is something I will ask him. But without Mason Graham in there, that defensive line. I mean, have you I'm just going to say fact, as you as a bigger guy ever caught a pass like on a deflection like Kenneth Grant did? And holy crap, he must have been an hog in there, right?
Hey, listen, that kid, Ballas, it wasn't like it just popped up right in front of him.
Right.
That ball
What
went
is
up in the
yeah,
air, and he had to go find it over his left shoulder.
yes,
It was like
yes,
an over the shoulder grab in traffic as he had I think one of the offensive linemen was coming to grab him. And I
yeah,
was like, oh my God, that kid found
yeah,
that ball in the air over his shoulder. That was
yeah.
unbelievable.
You couldn't do that back in the day. Come on.
That would have been a hard because I had the big neck brace on and everything. I don't think I had to turn
Oh,
my head and looked, but that young man made an unbelievable play to catch that
yeah,
thing. So that was exciting. I sat up in my chair. I was like, did I just see that thing?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so that was, and of course, Ballas, how many years have I been saying this? The part that happens after a play like that, when you see the entire sideline
yeah,
smiles, they're happy for him, they're
yeah,
happy for each other, they're congratulating each other, and you can just see this galvanization of the Michigan team together.
yeah.
Two things: it builds confidence amongst yourselves, and your opponent, this opponent and future opponents are going, damn, these
Mhm.
guys really, really enjoy playing hard for each other.
They
And it
love
has a demoralizing effect on them.
yeah,
And that's absolutely part of what happened on Saturday.
yeah. They love KG, and there's nothing not to love about that kid. We interviewed him in Arizona, for the Fiesta Bowl, and what an unbelievable kid. Just a gentle giant, man. But when he gets on that field, he plays with a nasty
He
streak, which I
does.
love.
He
I
looks like
love that.
he looks like it'd be a tough dude to move.
Yes, and he is a tough dude to move. So Braden McGregor, credit to him for getting a hand on that ball.
Yeah.
He played a great game, I thought.
Yeah.
I'm still not concerned. They've had four. You know what? Heinrich Harburg, the quarterback, he said, it's one of the cleanest pockets I've had this year. And I'm thinking, well, you got sacked 4 times and you had 3 balls knocked down. So still doing something right. And were they max protecting a lot from what you saw, or what was going on up there?
I didn't notice, quite
Okay.
honestly. I don't know that they were. And
Yeah.
McGregor off the edge. He's been, since he's found himself on the football field a lot in the last 2 seasons. This is becoming one of his specialties. He does a really nice job of keeping his eyeballs on the quarterback, and when that ball's coming his way, he's a big, tall kid. He gets his hands up, and that's almost like a lost art now amongst
Yeah.
defensive linemen, getting your hands up. And so he's been doing it in big moments for the last 2 years, and he did it again. And
We learned
so,
it from, right?
yeah, he got that from Hutch.
He sure did. Hutch still does it in with the
Yeah,
Lions, who, by the way,
absolutely.
are on the way to the Super Bowl. So,
Yeah,
and
Super Bowl for the Lions. That's right.
that's
Where's your face
unbelievable.
paint?
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, I'm all in, which means something's gonna happen. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm scarred, folks. Okay, so don't blame me for being skeptical. But I've been to a game and I love this team and I love watching Hutch play, obviously. So all right, last thing here. We did talk about Jim Harbaugh's contract last week, and
Mhm.
that compelled a few people to pick up the phones and give me a call. And we made some calls ourselves, and they said, look, here's the situation. What the lawyers have said, and what people are saying is that the optics are bad. If the NCAA hates Jim Harbaugh is the way I think a lot of people
There's
view
a
it.
flag, I think, above the NCAA offices that have a picture
Right.
of Jim's face with a big
Yeah,
red
Jim.
circle and a line through it.
Exactly. Right. So they are being told that, hey, it's going to be looked at, and there's a more likelihood that he's going to get a couple more games if we decide, screw you, NCAA, we're going to extend you now. Jim is aware of this, and they are ready to go, and he's going to be one of the highest paid coaches in the Big Ten, if not the highest paid coach in the Big Ten, once this is all settled. So,
So wait a minute. Did I hear you? So did I hear you
yes,
correctly in saying that the chatter is that
yes.
Michigan's waiting to see what the NCAA does or doesn't do with this guy?
They are saying that they believe strongly that the NCAA will come down harder on him. So they're protecting him, basically, is what they're saying.
Hmm.
By they don't want him to miss a couple games next year, including the Texas game, for example. By
Hmm.
saying, okay, thumbing their nose at the NCAA, this is our coach. He didn't, we don't care what you do, what you say. You know what? So that would make them more inclined to maybe tack a couple games on there. But I have also heard others say that they hope this is behind them. I think we will know by the end of January what the situation is, and if Jim Harbaugh has some NFL opportunities, I still think he will at least listen. But that is what they are saying. They say it has nothing to do with anything other than that. That they want Jim Harbaugh here. Santa Ono has actually responded to people on our message boards emailing him saying it is a top priority. From everything I have heard, I believe him. That'd be one hell of a legacy, right? To lose your coach that's basically got you back playing elite football here, and getting to the playoffs. So I strongly believe that yes, it will be a priority for them. Will it be enough? Who knows? But I
Well,
just
I hope
wanted
so.
wanted to
I
say,
hope so. But as I sit here today,
yep,
I'm glad to hear that kind of stuff, Balas, and the
yep,
chatter hopefully is a good thing. But as I sit here today, if the Chicago Bears call, January, February when their
it's
season's
cheap.
over, I still, and Jim gets an offer, I think he leaves.
Yeah, yeah, and they're cheap. So who knows if he'll offer them? Every time I watch a Las Vegas Raiders or a Los Angeles Chargers game too, like they played
Yeah.
each other yesterday, and I'm like, damn it, one of them's going to lose.
Yep.
So you just don't know. But you know what? And if I'll tell you what, if he were to leave and he has that itch to go back and try to get a Super Bowl, get the Lombardi Trophy, then more power to him. But uh, here's hoping that they do everything in their power to keep him. If it were me, man, I would be.
Full
I
court
don't
press.
I don't give a damn how much you might be butting heads with this guy. You know what? I'm kissing his ass. I'm saying, Jim, what do you want? What
Yep.
can I do for you?
Yep.
And I'm sorry for cutting your pay or whatever, even if you're not. Back in
Yep.
2020 when it was might have been deserved. So,
Let
but
him coach. Let him coach
maybe
the
that's just
team.
me.
I
Yeah.
know. Let him
Yep.
let him coach the team.
Yep.
The other thing that we don't hear about with his players is guys doing dumb stuff off the field.
Nope.
And the few players that have touched the electric fence with Coach Harbaugh, gone.
Yep.
And so he don't play around. He runs a tight knit organization, and I think the guy's done an outstanding job here since turning whatever corner it was,
Yep.
coming off of the final year of disappointments. And
Yep.
now Michigan football is where it wants to be, and this is now a Jim Harbaugh identified organization, and it's got all the characteristics of what so many of the elements that us former players recognize in this current football program, and all the things that we expect. The guys are doing a good job. Guys got have guys doing stupid things, and so it'd be great if the NCAA and maybe President Ono is along the plans of who cares what they think with their flag above their office if they hate Jim Harbaugh. We're going to keep this guy. We're going to make it very, very difficult for him to leave should
Yeah.
an NFL team make him an offer. We're going to make him think hard and hard about this before making that decision.
Without a doubt. He's Doug Skene, 5-time Big Ten champion. Skene, appreciate it. We will talk again next week.
All right, go blue.